everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, I want to talk about what I like to call the Vanillafication of kink. That is, the process of the aesthetics of BDSM being more widely used without a corresponding acceptance of kinky people or the kink community. We last discussed this over a year ago on my channel, and I'm sorry to report that things have not improved in the last couple of months or even the last year. In fact, if anything, it's gotten more explicit in both senses of the word, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. To be clear here though, before we get into anything that I really want to talk about, my main intention with this video is not to gatekeep identification with kink or the use of BDSM imagery in art. While I do think that some degree of gatekeeping in some cases can be beneficial, even necessary, that is not the point of this conversation. Besides, frankly, it's kind of hard to gatekeep when someone runs over the gate with a backhoe and doesn't even say, "Hey, do you mind if I borrow this?" before scooping up everything they can in sight. No, the point is that I am seeing some worrying trends correlating with each other, and I think it's important to discuss this. Surely, I am not the only person who has noticed that we have got both libs of TikTok trying to shut down BDSM events and celebrities showing up basically nude to red carpet events, wearing bondage gear in public, and talking about touching themselves in mainstream media publications. Like, that's kind of weird it's happening at the same time, right? So, what has been going on here? And where I want to start is with the original catalyst that made me want to make this video. And it was this photo shoot that Camila Cabello did for King Kong magazine. And I'd never heard of them before, and the description on their website makes it about as clear as mud. Quote, "King Kong demonstrates art's ability to respond to ideas and events that shape our contemporary experience. Art and fashion do not operate in a vacuum, and we portray this multidisciplinary expression and innovation. King Kong Studio acts as a creative agency, offering a service as think tank on creativity and production. From daydreams to plans, from paper to exhibition, from virtual presence to feel-good parties, from ideas to functioning reality." Does anyone have any idea what that's supposed to mean? To me, that sounds kind of like AI word salad. Going through their social media, though, they had a fettuccine issue back in 2021, so this kind of photo shoot is not out of the blue for them. It seems they didn't have a grasp of the subject matter back then either, but this 2024 version feels more direct. Like it's more literally saying, "Hey, look, we're doing ponyplay. You know, the thing from that movie. Remember when Maggie Gyllenhaal was on her hands and knees with a carrot in her mouth? Yeah, we're doing that, and it's edgy, and it's cool, and it's different. Look how we shot it." But it's without any genuine appreciation for what they're doing. It feels to me like they're just doing it to do it. Like it's just about being different. It screams edge in the way The Idol screamed, "We're trying to be edgy." This is a theme I've noticed with most of the things we're going to talk about here today. It's all bark, no bite. If the dog didn't even know why they're barking. There's no way in heck, in my opinion, that a genuine leather connoisseur with a capital L would shoot the material like how they did it in this photo shoot. It is bad. I mean, I thought it was unshined latex at first. The composition makes it read more like a floppy faux leather than the genuine article. If you're going to use the material as shorthand for adult and risque, at least have the follow-through to understand what is enjoyable about it to enthusiasts and have that inform the way you conduct the shoot. And I'm not an art expert. I guess I'm trying to tell them how to do their job, but like, the super over bright, overexposed backyard shoot, I don't think was the thing to go for here. And it really makes me wonder what the original intention for all of this was. And I think with just a little bit of guessing, I can figure out what's going on here. So if you don't know who Camila Cabello is, she is a pop artist who originally made a name for herself in the group Fifth Harmony before becoming an independent singer. There's more to the story than that, but frankly it doesn't really matter, so just leave it there, okay? She has a new album slated to be released this year, and she released a single called I Love It in April. As I understand it, amongst pop fans, she has a reputation for being kind of bland, and she was clearly trying to do the most to stand out this time around when promoting her new album and trying to drum up hype for it. And, well, so far, none of it's really seemed to land. I Love It was widely panned by critics, with Pitchfork referring to it as a prank, and our own local YouTuber Anthony Fantano titling his review simply, "This song is so bad." She went so far as to bleach her hair blonde and mess with her eyebrows as part of her new look for this album cycle. I have to believe that this is something that goes along with her whole trying to reinvent herself era, and that this ponyplay-esque getup and photo shoot is another part of this cynical attempt at seeming different and trying to drum up interest in her new music. I mean, after all, visual communication-wise, right? If she looks so different, her music must sound really new and different, right? But sadly, her attempts at edge aren't even all that original. Her new blonde look has drawn comparisons to Sabrina Carpenter, and the ponyplay outfit is nearly identical to a look sported by Julia Fox almost exactly a year ago. At least Julia Fox can say that she used to work for a house of domination. So, mark Camila down as yet another pop starlet who has used kink iconography in a failed attempt to set herself apart from both other artists as well as her other eras of music. And to really add insult to injury here, I can't even defend the designer here. They seem more inspired by cheap teenage ideas of rebellion, and rather than trying to connect to the culture of BDSM, they're just kind of using it to rile up people, saying, quote, "But when people advise me not to do something, that makes me want to rebel even more." I mean, how mature, I guess. I mean, I'd love to interview everyone involved in this and see if anyone had any idea what they were trying to really reference, or if it just started and stopped with, "I want to do something I haven't done before. Let's do some Googling. Oh, there's something Julia Fox did. Let's try that. Everyone loved talking about her looks when she was with Kanye West," like that. Kanye's also been doing some stuff too, but we're not going to get into that today. So, when it comes to weird, uneducated references to BDSM, the music industry is rife with examples. Something I mentioned in another video I'm working on, I think this one's probably going to come out after it, is an article that was about choking. And in that article, they talk about a Jack Harlow song called "Lovin' on Me." And I had to hold myself back in that video to avoid talking about it for too long, but oh boy, do I have some thoughts about that song. So this song was especially popular, particularly on TikTok, and it spent 6 weeks at #1 after it was released in November of 2023. Literally, probably the #1 song on Christmas, and I still hear all the time. If you've never heard the song before, I can't play snippets for you because YouTube copyright just sucks for music and you're going to have to deal, but I can do a dramatic reading of the relevant lyrics. So here we go. "I don't like no whips and chains, and you can't tie me down, but you can whip your lovin' on me, baby. Whip your lovin' on me, baby. I'm vanilla, baby. I'll choke you, but I ain't no killer, baby." And repeating it this way makes me sound like Ben Shapiro. but we're just gonna have to deal with it. And I'd be lying if I said the song wasn't an earworm, though. There is a reason why that song is so popular beyond just the lyrical content. But let's focus on the lyrics, though, shall we? The story seems to be saying, essentially, I'm not into kink, but you are, and I'm willing to do certain stuff for you, even if that's not my thing. Or possibly my original first impression was that he was saying choking is vanilla, so he's comfortable going there, but no further. And, it would be silly for me to blame this song for the surge of popularity in choking, but at the very least, it seems to reflect a more widespread interest. This is not just me making an inference, though, by the way. This is something we actually have data about. Choking is more popular than ever with young people, and it is also often done between casual partners or even strangers with little to no upfront negotiation or knowledge. And considering the fact that breath play is considered so risky by average kinksters that it's banned from most play parties and it's also a frequent default hard limit, it is concerning to see it be treated like a standard hookup activity. And actually, on the note of hookups, I want to kind of tie in an observation here. Do you all remember when that study made headlines back in 2022? I believe I referenced it in a video as well. And everyone just decried the fact that fewer people, really men, were having sex, and people that were having sex were starting to do so later in life. Remember all those think pieces we got about so-called Puritans and sex recessions. We had so much good new language being coined around this, and by good, I mean cringe. Then they also declared that Gen Z was forgoing dating apps, and that they also wanted to have less sex and romance in TV and movies, and just generally seemed to be a pretty sexless generation. Paradoxically, over sex thanks to a lifetime of access to the internet, but perceived as sexless nonetheless. And I can't help but to notice a strange dichotomy forming here. On the one hand, we're being told Gen Z is the most sexually conservative generation of the modern era, and on the other, look at the popular media they create and consume. Jack Harlow, born in '98, is undoubtedly a Zoomer. TikTok is awash with highly sexual trends and audio clips, like ones from Doja Cat, for example, including ones that also are like things from Jack Harlow's song. If you look up terms like kinky, you will almost certainly see 18-year-olds calling each other vanilla like it's an insult for not being down to do this or that thing during intercourse. And from what I've heard on the Hot 100, pop music has not gotten any less sexual in the past 10 years. If anything, it's just gotten more in your face, talking about choking and biting and slapping and spanking and all that with a directness we did not previously see in radio hits. Sex in popular music has been a thing for basically forever, but it used to be more euphemistic. I believe we can largely agree. And honestly, I don't know what to make of all of this, but a million different theories have been suggested, from people being desensitized thanks to early exposure, or social media melting our dopamine receptors, or it being a form of rebellion against the previous supposedly dominant framework of sex-positive culture. There is one theory, though, that I don't think is getting enough attention. One of the lead researchers investigating the surge of choking among young people said in an interview, quote, "Personally, my hypothesis is that this is one of the reasons young people are delaying or having less sex, because it's uncomfortable and weird and scary. At times, some of them literally think someone is assaulting them, but they don't know. Those are the only sexual experiences for some people. And it's not just once they've gotten naked. They'll say things like, I've only tried to make out with someone once because he started choking and hitting me. So could it be that the perceived popularity of rough acts all over social media is fueling some kind of peer pressure-driven performance of kinkiness? But people actually aren't that into it and it's making them feel weird and awkward and violated and pressured? The answer to what is going on with Gen Z's relationship to sex is probably going to be some combination of everything I've mentioned. Pigeonholing an entire generation as either being Puritans or the kinkiest young folk ever is never going to give you a complete picture. The truth is, different people in the same generation can go in very different directions. There are some who are genuinely exhausted by the constant onslaught of sexuality in media. I'm with them on that. I could do with an asexual fantasy romance series. Why not? Sure, let's give it a go. And others besides them are eagerly embracing hookups and feel at ease discussing sex in a way previous generations haven't always. But regardless of which way individuals are going, none of them are getting the education about the things they're doing with the kind of attention that they deserve. They need that education and they're not getting it. And without that education, it is not surprising that songs promoting choking are becoming popular TikTok trends. And TikTok, as a social media platform, is especially good at commodifying anything its users show wide interest in, from books to water bottles. Identity isn't inherent on TikTok. It must be displayed through consumption. It is not good enough to just like books, for example. You have to be into books as your defining personality trait. And being into books means buying all the hottest new releases, following the trends of what other people are reading, coming up with reading lists, getting literally dozens of books at the same time. And when you do, always getting that fancy hardcover edition to display in your bookcase that you got to have as a background in your book talk videos. People collect, they show off, and it's done to an extent that I haven't seen since maybe the peak of makeup YouTube, God, 10 years ago now? But now, it's not just makeup, it's for everything. It's like we've forgotten Kindles exist. It's not surprising to me that in this purchase-driven environment, kink would become another thing to display, another piece of identity to conspicuously consume. The seeds were already there. When kinky Instagram was a really big deal about 8 years ago, many people were driven not by a genuine interest in roleplay or power exchange, but because they wanted to be part of that thing. They wanted to get to wear cool stuff and be part of the aesthetic. This is also quite a big deal over on Tumblr as well, though I was less involved with that community. But TikTok has taken that to a whole new level. And choking has become the flagship activity used to prove an interest in kink, even if it may be anything but authentic. And I don't want to be too judgmental. I am sure there are many young people who are really kinky, who are out here cringily talking about how they're so not vanilla because they're so into whatever thing, like choking. Because that's what young people tend to do. But they usually get a chance to grow out of it, and then they realize how gauche it is to act like that, and that how much you do or don't like BDSM is really deeply personal, and it's not something to do as a performance to win points. We didn't just, have all this conversation about it. We didn't used to display it this way. We didn't used to film this judgmental, kinkier than thou phase and put it out there for the whole world to see. And also be influenced by. And now there may be a feedback loop happening where people feel pressured to show that they are creative, adventurous, down for whatever, not boring and not vanilla. And so they are putting out TikToks, which influence people in turn. And then the cycle just keeps going. And speaking of people who feel pressured to show how creative and different they are, let's talk about Doja Cat. Oh, I'm about to upset the Doja stans in my audience. Doja has a long history of controversy, which I will not be getting into today. What you need to know about her, though, for this is that she is a female rapper who rose to prominence after a few viral hits online, and she has been steeped in internet culture, for better or for worse, since way before she got famous. I think she said before that she basically was like raised online. Sexuality has often been a topic of her music, and she hasn't shied away from kink either, with lines like, "Tell me what's your kink? Spank me, slap me, choke me, bite me," appearing in her music from time to time. Unlike Camila Cabello, I don't think these BDSM references are just cheap cash grabs. I believe Doja when she raps about her various non-vanilla interests. They do seem like they would be her thing. She has worn latex countless times, as well as, let's say, pro-dom-like outfits in music videos. But just because she's not strictly vanilla in her personal life or in her music doesn't mean that she is immune to commodifying kink in a negative way. For Coachella this year, Doja Cat had a series of cream and off-white looks aiming for, as she described, quote, "a textural fever dream." One of the looks in the series included a piece by Alexander Wang. Her stylist described the creation process for that garment as, quote, "There were so many ideas bouncing around, but we landed on this idea of rope and playing the bone structure of her body, but making it super, super sexy. I mean, who doesn't love a little kinky shibari moment on the biggest music stage in the world?" Alexander Wang posted a video of the finished outfit with the caption, "Shibari Rebel." Clearly, shibari in particular was what they were going for. Not just kink, not just edgy, not even just rope bondage. Shibari specifically, as in Japanese rope bondage of a specific lineage. And immediately, this seemed familiar to me. And where had I seen it before? My mind went instantly to the work of Hajime Kanoko, who is probably one of the most famous rope artists of all time. He has been featured at countless international art installations and was even on an episode of Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain. Rest in peace. He's gotten international attention. He does a lot of work with rope as a sculptural medium, as an aspect of fashion, and of course he does also use it in traditional ways as well. So, I wasn't surprised when I went to his Twitter page and discovered that it seemed Alexander Wang had borrowed something from the cover of his 2023 photo book. I mean, at least take something from inside the pages, put a little effort in, my goodness. As Hajime put it, Alexander Wang bindings are similar to mine. No, they're too similar. It's a shame that Alexander Wang couldn't provide me with a better design if he had ordered directly from me. In other words, your rope does not look good, and instead of knocking me off, you could have just hired me. I mean, wow, roasted fully on the timeline there, Alexander Wang, but also true. Why is it that so few of the houses who are associated with edgy aesthetics actually work with the people and the communities who inspire them? It really takes the shine off what could have been a really cool moment to know the design was a paltry knockoff rather than a really cool novel collaboration. It's not like Hajime is some kind of reclusive artist on a mountain who is impossible to contact. He's on Twitter. At the very least, they could have given him credit in one of the interviews they did talking about Doja's looks for Coachella. But I guess that would be too close to admitting art theft. So instead we're going to pretend there's no similarity whatsoever. And let's say, even if they didn't knock off this specific look from one artist, they definitely would have knocked it off from someone somewhere. Fashion designers don't just suddenly reinvent the rope bondage wheel and happen to call it the exact same term as a coincidence. Just disappointing. We could have had a really cool moment, and I don't know if I blame Doja for this so much as her team and Alexander Wang, but imagine the collaboration that could have happened there. That would have been really interesting to see. But now, those are more or less the examples that I wanted to share with you all. But what is the point of all of this? What can we learn from these tales of borrowed inspiration, to put it generously, and trying to seem edgier to further a pop career? Well, I think it's important to be aware of how kinkiness is being appropriated. And using that term may seem hyperbolic, but I really can't think of a better term for what's happening here. Appropriation, at its core, is the taking of elements from one culture or identity and using them without acknowledgement, appreciation, or permission from that culture that it originates from. It would be one thing if Camila Cabello talked about how she loved ponyplay in Anne Rice's Sleeping Beauty trilogy, or if Alexander Wang or his team gave Hajime Kanoko a shout out somewhere. But that is not what anyone is doing. Instead, we have people from all levels of culture, all levels of influencers, from A-list designers to B-tier TikTok creators, looking vaguely at kink stuff and going, yeah, that seems cool, and then taking it without any knowledge of what they're doing or why they are doing it. It's to the point now where many people are copying people who are copying people who are copying people who are copying kink. And that results in some truly hilarious interactions, like people who insist that DDLG is not part of BDSM and that it's safe for work, or that choking isn't edge play, let alone a kink activity. These are real things that people are saying online, by the way. And I'm not saying anyone should lose sleep over all of this. I mean, at the end of the day, the world is not ending because people are playing around with the imagery of kink without knowing what they're doing or what they're referencing. But I personally cannot shake the feeling that this all seems very weird, even wrong somehow. Because it's not like this is coming on the back of some wider mainstream acceptance of kink. If anything, thanks to libs of TikTok going after a BDSM dungeon recently, there's a bigger negative spotlight on us than there has been in a really long time. The average person would still be grossed out if they found out that their neighbor or a coworker was kinky. Like so many modern phenomenon, it's failed to live up to its potential. Like how sex positivity became more about having a drawer full of toys than about radically changing our culture's understanding of consent on a wider scale. Or how in the last century, feminist movements failed to be able to fully sexually liberate women. BDSM hasn't been widely adopted or accepted as a radical new way to practice intimacy or a way to play with power structures that exist in everyday life. It is just another thing to buy, to collect, to be a part of in a very performative way, at least visually, if not in lived reality. And in the structureless, hellish market that is modern culture, anyone can be that buyer or that collector, regardless of how much they care or know about what they're buying. While some people hate to think of kink as political, crying out that people are trying to take the fun out of BDSM and put politics into it that were never there before, I think it's pretty hard to argue our community has no political aspects whatsoever. Doing subversive, sometimes even illegal things in our relationships and to our bodies has an inherently political element to it. And I think BDSM, like punk rock and feminism and sex positivity before it, is going through a whole new phase of, I'm gonna drop the term here, political recuperation. Remember how I mentioned appropriation before? This is that same idea on a much wider scale, where the teeth are taken out of kink, the genuinely weird subversive elements of it that maybe have abilities to shift culture, and the remainder is used in more socially acceptable ways like sexy bondage outfits and pop music. This neutralization process, this co-opting, is not necessarily conscious targeting, but it is one way that society as a collective copes with ideas which could result in radical change. It's not, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em, but if you can't beat 'em, start dressing like 'em to ensure the status quo remains the status quo. And hey, it's a nice bonus if you can turn a tidy profit borrowing from these weird new ideas from people beneath you without having to cite them, pay them, or respect them either. And this is something I'm going to keep monitoring as time goes on. I find it very difficult because I don't make content like this very often, at least, typically on my channel, how to balance awareness of talking about a potential rising issue versus making something like a way bigger deal than it really is. I don't think that, Doja Cat's team stealing a design potentially for a body harness is the end of the world. I don't think that this is a sign of the vanillas are stealing our kink and we have to panic. I don't think we need to shut down our publicly, known bunches or our publicly known dungeon venues anytime soon. But it's more about putting a flag on it and going, let's monitor that. Let's see where this continues to develop, because I don't want us as a community to be caught off guard in 5 years or 10 years when things have progressed much more than they already have. Or potentially, we can flag it and maybe it'll ebb and flow and it'll ebb away from us and it won't really end up being a problem. It'll just fade away as a trend, and maybe in 5 years, everyone's going to be cosplaying as the actual Puritans, I guess, or fundamentalists. We're going to have fundamentalist fashion take over the runway. I don't know. It's a possibility. It could happen. So I'm not saying it's something, just don't panic. Just not saying to panic right now. Don't panic, but just be aware, monitor, have conversations. And I think especially because so much of this, very loose representation is not going along with education and awareness. You have people that like things and then don't really even know why they like them or what it means or how to find more information about it because it's so detached from the rest of the culture in a way that did not used to be the case even a pretty short time ago. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just kind of watching it, just kind of see how everything pans out from here. It is interesting how long kink has been in the trend spotlight, because it's been at least a couple years now at this point, and I'm not sure how much staying power it has. I think there's, when you are having celebrities show up to red carpet events, literally wearing a sheer dress with fully visible nipples and bush, there's only so much farther you can push the envelope there. There has to be either full barrier breaking or a rebound in the opposite direction, because that's just how things generally tend to go. So anyways, I would love to know your thoughts about this one and a comment down below. Are there any stories I missed? Any other examples of Vanillafication online with celebrities, music that I didn't get to? I would love to know all your thoughts in a comment down below. And also, if you enjoy this, if you're not already, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of different kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do it is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.